5280 Sports Network. How are you? Nate Lundy, then right to left on your television dial here. We've got Shawn Drotar, also 5280 Sports Network, Mile High Sports Radio. Doug Ottewell, Mile High Sports.
Good. Were you in weather?
I'm trying.
You know how you do
Well, the two of you are just sort of like an ongoing green screen to me. You're not really here, are you? Are you just all right? So we've got a preview. We've got Game 2 of the preseason for the Broncos coming up on Saturday night. The Niners were in town for joint practices. Now the Niners will be at the stadium formerly known as Sports Authority Field for the game on Saturday night. Shawn, I'll start with you. Based on practices this week, what are you going to be looking at or focused on Saturday night?
Well, besides the obvious quarterbacking situation, I think I want to take a look at the offensive line. There's been some injuries there. They're trying to get healthy. It's a bit makeshift at the moment, and especially when you're trying to have a full-fledged quarterback controversy between Trevor Siemian and Mark Sanchez. Trying to see how these guys can handle a line that's in flux is going to be important and part of the equation as well. So I'd like to look at that first. I want to see how the health is getting better. I want to see how they're starting to gel as a unit, because they don't really have as much time as you think. And as good as it's been for the Broncos the last few years, the fact is Peyton Manning, even with declining health, was able to stave off some of the offensive line problems simply by his ability to make pre-snap reads that I don't think Mark Sanchez or Trevor Siemian can make.
Doug, what are you going to be looking for now that we've got these practices down? We're into week 2, Saturday night on the field. What do you want to see?
I want to see the Broncos on offense only. I don't want to see any defense out there, because I think, honestly, and I kid, but honestly, we know what this defense is. This defense is so good. The only thing that can happen that is affecting this team could be negative, and that would be an injury. So I'd just as soon see the offense, but obviously that can't happen. But I think, obviously I'm a Shawn in that you have to see what this offense can do, because I think the game against the Bears is a really unfair sort of a test. That team is not a good team. They don't have a single Pro Bowler on that defense. They just don't look like a good football team. So even in practice this week against the Niners, you saw the offense struggle. On Thursday specifically, offense just didn't look very good. Quarterbacks weren't in sync. Receivers weren't catching the ball. The offensive line, I think, is going to be tested when you're going against a much scrappier, much more talented defense. So I think that's the big thing that everybody's going to watch. The other thing I think, and we didn't necessarily talk a lot about it, but I want to still watch this running back competition. That's an underrated competition that's going on, where a lot of guys have a claim to it, I think.
Let me piggyback on two things there. First one, Shawn, you talked about the offensive line. As much as they need to gel, to a certain extent, wouldn't you agree that the constant change in who's under center sometimes can make it hard for them to gel, right? Because regardless of their depth chart, they don't always know who's going to be barking the calls behind them. That has to affect it too, right?
It does. They're very fortunate that at least they have a clear starter in Matt Paradis, who played every snap last year. So at least in that regard, they're clear. But you're right, it does change. It changes all of it. It changes it for wide receivers. It changes it for running backs. Everything down to the spin of the ball can be slightly different. So it really changes the offense either way. I guess looking at that offensive side too and into the quarterback battle, Trevor Siemian, when you take a look at him, to my mind, if he's not spending a lot of time with the top unit, then this whole idea about a quarterback competition is probably not for real. And I do want to see how Siemian plays. I do want to see if the Broncos give him the opportunity. To me, it looks like he's been the better quarterback the whole way through. Now, quarterbacks and coaches tend to they both like to have the veteran guys with experience, some of the stuff you've alluded to, Nate. But to me, the way that Siemian may be able to take this job, potentially even in this game, that's very real. This is the game where you'll see a lot of time. If Siemian gets that start with the ones, if he plays well, going into Game 3, the last one that, let's admit, matters,
right.
Now you have a really interesting narrative about that offense, and everything we've been thinking about it all offseason changes.
Doug, a follow-up for you. You talked about not wanting to see the defense out there. Shawn and I have talked about this on the radio show on Mile High Sports Radio in the morning. I'm disappointed that the Arizona Cardinals are Game 4 of the preseason. I wish the Cardinals were Game 2 or 3, because this offense, other than being tested against their own defense, isn't the Niners are not a huge test. The Rams have a good defense, but not great. There's part of me that wishes the Cardinals were either Game 2 or 3.
Yeah, and I'm sure Gary Kubiak does too, because you're right. You're judging guys that you're trying to make a decision on. And you mentioned Siemian. I mean, it's a great thing because he looks great out here, and he really does. But you want to see him do it in live bullet action. And I'll throw another one in there. I would like to see Paxton Lynch go against not just another good defense like Arizona, but just a second string or even a first string, because to me, and we heard a lot of chatter about it this week, guys are starting to say, hey, Paxton Lynch has the best arm on this team. They're not shy about saying, and these are his teammates.
Right.
He's got the best arm, he's got the best upside. I know they're trying to be patient with him, but should this be a 3-horse race as opposed to a 2-horse race? I think you're right. It's a two-guy scramble right now. They're trying to figure out which guy can get the start. But if we're really being honest, he's made enough noise and people have taken enough notice of him that I would like to see him go against some of those top defensive units, because who knows? We may have somebody that's better than both Simeon and Sanchez right here.
So you play the schedule you're given, right? That's unfortunately the way that it works. So it will be the Niners and the Broncos on Saturday night at the stadium. That will at some point have a name again. But that takes place Saturday night. So, of course, next week we'll have the recaps for you. We'll look back on it, hopefully on no injuries or anything like that. For Shawn Drotar, 5280 Sports Network, Doug Ottewell, Mile High Sports, my name is Nate Lundy. We'll talk to you next week.